Hey guys, Jason with CV Customs. Back on the 96 12 valve. On the last video we did the fuel plate. Before that we did our compression check. Now we're going to put the twin ram on. You'll understand when you see the engine. I'm trying to do everything kind of in phases so that as I take stuff off, I'm not putting it on only to take it back off again. So let me show you what we got to put on, and then I'll show you what we're going to take off at this point, and we'll go back together with it. Alright, this is the Banks Power Pack Twin Ram, right? That's what it says. Honestly, I mean, the color and everything looks really good. I'll tell you one thing I noticed on it. Look at that. Because you know they're just taking a sander and sanding off the powder coat that they already put on it. But you see that? I mean, I know this was not cheap. Now, I didn't pay for it. The guy who asked me to put this on, he bought everything, and it is what it is. But just saying, you pay that kind of money, a little bit of attention to detail, guys. Come on. Okay, but in any case, I digress. Let's get back. All right, this is the kit. It does come with all the plugs. So what these are for, there's only 6 right here because I've already used 6 of them because I pulled the injection lines off earlier in this long project. But the other 6 would have went on these injectors. The injectors are not in the engine now because we're going to put these injectors in, but we're going to get this job done first, and we're going to go ahead and shoot some gloss on our valve covers before we put the gaskets back on them. So we got a little bit of work to do before this thing gets buttoned up. Right now we're going to get this thing on. There's a few things that you need to do on this. One of the complicated things is the heating element. On the factory, the heating element is stacked. For this system, you're going to separate the heating elements and put it in each tube for the twin ram. So let's take a look at the engine and go from there. All right, let's jump up here. We'll see what we're going to take off. Now again, I don't try to make you guys watch me work. So you can see it's only a couple of bolts. I'm going to get everything zapped off, and we'll pull it out. You see the two, those are the 2 hot lines. That's the heating element, and there's actually 2 of those, one on top of the other. So we're going to separate that, put it inside our new system, go from there. We will go ahead and pull the last 2 valve covers that I didn't pull yet. Now, I will tell you, I was looking at this thing, just a little side note, but you look at that. You can see why he had an oil leak. Somebody pulled the valve cover. Maybe they adjusted the valves or something, but the gasket didn't seat. So, but I've got a trick for seating the gaskets on these 12 valves, so I'll show you guys that when we get to the valve adjustment and resetting the valve covers. That'll be a different video. Right now we're going to get this. So what we're going to reuse, we're going to reuse this, reuse the elements, get rid of the rest. It's possible we're going to use one of these. I can't remember. I haven't done this upgrade in a while, but I'll let you guys know as we go. But for the most part, that whole piece goes away. Also, this tube, the kit comes with a new tube, so we'll pull this out, we'll throw it on, and we'll put our injection lines back in. I think we're going to go ahead and do the injection lines and injectors while we do this project, because it's easier for me to put the injection lines on while the twin tube part of this is off, and then we'll set that back on with the lines underneath, and it'll just work better. So these are all 10mm bolts. I'm going to zap those off. I'm going to get it up here, and we'll talk about what we're going to do to swap over the elements. All right, guys, got it off. Wanted to point out how clean that thing looks in there. Brand new. That little the spotting is just my brake parts cleaner. So anyways, getting it all cleaned up, I pulled those other 2 valve covers. Now this is the time-consuming part of the job, the old gasket. We've got to get all this up. Now on the valve covers, doesn't really matter, it's a rubber seal. It cleans up really easy. But this, we're gonna have to scrape, and then emery cloth, and I may have to go ahead and pull the fuel filter housing just so I can get underneath. I want a good seal. You know, any type of leak right here is going to cut down on the amount of boost you get. So it's not like it's going to suck stuff in because it's only a pressurized system, but what it'll do is you'll lose power. We don't want to lose power. So we're going to get this thing cleaned up real nice. It's time consuming, so I'm not going to make you watch, but I'll get back to you when it's done. Okay, so I'm not going to lie. That was a lot of work. But we got it done. We were able to just move the oil filter housing out of the way and get it all cleaned up. She's clean, she's dry. We're ready to begin the install at this point. Now, again, you don't have to take off your valve covers to do this job. I took them off because it's part of the job, and it does make it easier just being off, but do not take them off unless you plan on replacing your gaskets, because if they haven't been put together right, they're just not going to be reusable. So, all right, let's walk over here. All right, we're looking at our parts again. Couple important things. Number one, we're not going to put these on yet. We're putting the base plate on first. Okay, so we can set those to the side, but important, they're actually different. One has a place to clamp the fuel lines on. That's going to go closer to the cab. Other than that, they're the same. We'll get them out of the way. Right now, we're going to put these down, and we're going to go ahead and torque them down. All bolts are going to be torqued to 18 foot-pounds. We're going to use 4 of these guys in these slots because it, you know, everything's moved, so the holes are offset now. So 4 of those. There is a 5th, and that's for this guy, and it's going to go over there in that corner. Again, this is up by the radiator, so that's closer to the valve cover right there. That'll be that guy. So I'll go throw it in. You see we got our gasket right here, so gasket will be down. I'll throw all these down, get them torqued down to 18 foot-pounds. Start from the middle, work your way out, and then we'll move on to getting our heating elements and our housings. Okay, it's all in there and torqued down. Place the sensor. You notice this guy's not actually facing the way it's supposed to, but the bolt's torqued down. Now I did that and I didn't worry about the bracket because it's slotted, and we're going to loosen that bolt anyways when we torque down the injection lines on the clamp. I still torqued it down so that the gasket compressed evenly. So when we do the injection lines, this will be loosened and then retorqued, all that fun stuff. But this is ready. Now we're going to move the heating element, and then before we throw the tube and the heating elements on, we're going to throw our injection lines on. And, oh, and replace this tube. I knew there was one other thing. And replace this tube. So, there we go. Let's go replace the elements. Okay, so we moved over to my bench. This is the original intake plate with the heating elements. What we're going to do is remove the lower one, because when the top one is the exact same process. Just do everything over again. So I'm going to show you how to do one. We're going to pull out the bottom element. So I'm going to flip this dude over. We'll get started, but you can see that we're going to be removing this bolt. All right, you just need a couple 10 millimeters. Sorry, let me get you in here so you can see what we're working on. So just jump on this guy right here. Now, you only need to loosen it because it's slotted. Should be able to just take it right out. Okay, and then this other one over here is another 10 millimeter. Now, it is important to keep all the parts, especially for the positive post, because that positive post, we're going to reuse it on our new heating element tower, or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, I mean, I am going to need the 12. Like that. So like I said, when you take this out, just pay attention to what you got, because basically you have a positive cable going to this bolt, and you do not want it to make contact with the housing, so you need all the parts that prevent that. So take this guy out nice and easy. That is loose. Oh, these guys. Okay. New game plan. We have to actually remove both at the same time. So we'll just knock that out real quick. So what they did is it's tapered in a direction. The insulators on the side go in a rail. Would have been easy for them just to slide out one way, but no. Engineers don't think about the mechanics, guys. Engineers think about engineers. Again, the heating elements come out with just 2 10s and 1 12. Might be easier with a socket. I'm honestly probably going to install it with a socket, just because this is kind of a weird angle. But when I decided to do the video, I was over here with 2 wrenches, so it's what it is. But it is now off. So again, pull these bolts out. Be careful. These insulators are important, and we're going to need all these insulators to make everything work on the other one. See, these are the insulators I'm talking about. See if I can get it closer to the camera. These are non-conductive, so when power's going here, it's not hitting the plate. So, there we go. Now, let's see if we can get this dude to come on. Okay. You see, I just kind of pushed it out. Here's what the first one came out with. Came out with its 2 insulators. These are also non-conductive. That's like a porcelain material, right? That sets in there, and it doesn't touch the sidewalls. Power goes here, ground's here. This gets hot and heats up the air. It's that simple. So there, that's out. I'll slide the other one out, put them in it. No big deal. You saw how easy it was. We'll get to the other one, and I'll show you how we're going to set it up. Okay, so here's what we're going to use. It's important to notice the heating element. There's more bends on one side than the other, so the porcelain's going to be different from one side to the other. There's actually one that has one less. So make sure you understand that. Other than that, no big deal. The other thing is this bolt. These washers that go right here are also non-conductive. It's important those washers stay in that place, because when you clamp it down, we don't want it to conduct. I guess that's what we'll say. All right, but that's the hole it's going through. Okay, so I got them both together. I actually explained all this to you guys, and I didn't have the camera on, so that's on me. But most important thing is to make sure that this plate here doesn't hit the housing. You need that gap. That's what the washer's doing. Now it does need to touch on the back side. That's because power is going from there, and it's got to get all the way to here before it grounds, and that's what's going to create the heat. That's what's going to make that element heat up. You can see that the bends are all in their little porcelain slots, both sides. Ground is on, and the hot bolt. Also with the ground, this is a grounding tab. When we set the other piece on, we're going to bend this over the hole here, and the bolt will go through it. That's just going to give it more of a positive ground. At least I suspect that's their thought on it. So yeah, let's go throw it on. Whoa, looks like we can't throw it on. I forgot we pulled the injectors out. Okay, now we're in a position because we have the base plate on. Before these all go on, we're going to throw our injectors back in, and then we've got all of our fuel lines to throw back on. I like to start, when I do injectors, I'm just going to throw them in, torque them down, and put the return line on, and then I'll do the individual injection lines. Kind of show you a little bit. It's not a whole lot to do these. It's not that complicated. So I'm going to put a little bit of grease on this brass washer on the top side between the injector and the brass washer, not the washer and the tip. What that's going to do is that's just going to keep it from falling into the hole and then me having to fish it out to start over. You also want to make sure that these little bearings, there's a slot in the head that those go in. That's what keeps the injector in the right position. So just slide that in, torque it down, no big deal. There's also another O-ring right here. All that is a dust cover. It keeps junk from getting inside, keeps them from rusting together, all that fun stuff. Keeps moisture out and everything. So you'll also slide that back down. I'll show you one, I'll do them all, and we'll move on. Okay guys, we're up here at the engine. Doesn't matter which one you start with, just make sure you've cleaned all the ports, which we already have. We didn't let anything get in there. And then, like I said, we're going to put a little dab of grease right in the gap there to keep this from sliding down. It does not take a lot of grease, and that grease isn't going to hurt anything inside, but see, that stops it from falling. Also, I've got my torque wrench set to 44 foot-pounds. I cleaned the socket because if you've got grease or something inside your socket, you can get it inside these ports, the injectors, and we don't want to do that. This is the return line port. It goes towards the exhaust side. That's what's going to line up our bearing. I think you can see this port okay. There's a little slot right there. Just going to slide it in. Now it's seated. Spin it down. And if your socket's deep enough and it'll work, if you can leave the cap on the injector, that's always best. I always like to double check. Okay, I'm going to do the other 5 and we'll get back when we're on the injectors. Okay guys, all the injectors are now put down, threw the lines on, and installed the clamps there, and the 2 over here. You can't install the clamp there and there because we're going to put our intake tube on first. Actually, that one actually clamps to the intake tube. Couple things we've got to do. We're going to go ahead and remove this tube. We never got around to it. We're also going to set our first 2 valve covers with the gaskets, and I'll show you why in just a second. We'll jump over there to the valve covers. We've already got them painted. They look really good, so let's get over there. Okay guys, real quick, we're looking at the valve covers. Just going to make this quick and simple. If you remember, if you're watching the full video, this is the valve cover gasket, and it was pinched, it had rolled under. If you look at what happens when they get all spongy, they won't seat, and they just, you try to put it back together and you get this extra bit and you end up with leaks. So here's what I've come up with. Now I'm gonna have to clean this valve cover before we go any further on that, but let's get those out of the way. That's the old, this is the new here. I'll just set this over this oil spot so we don't make a mess. Right. Here's what we do. I use this ultra black. You can use the right stuff. I mean, really good system, but just put a thin bit of silicone in here. And I just call it gluing the gasket to the valve cover, but you can call it whatever you want. Okay, then I don't want to make a mess all over the gasket because I actually don't want the silicone on the outside. Just want it to seat this thing to the valve cover. There we go. Cool. Now, we're going to run over to the engine and we're going to set this on and I'll show you what we're up to. Okay, trying to do this quickly, but we've made it over here, and this is why we're doing it this way. When you get back under the cowl, it's hard to get the gasket and see that it's seating. So right here on these two, where it's really easy, I can set it and I know the gasket seats. I'm going to set the first two. I know the gasket's good, and I'm just going to put it on hand tight. Well, looks like I may need to go just a little bit more than hand tight. So I'll just get it snug. You don't have to like lock it down, but what we're doing is we're seating that gasket. We give it about 30 minutes. When the silicone dries, we can remove it and we can put it in back behind the cowl and not worry about it coming off of the valve cover. That's why we do it that way. So I'm going to do it with 2 valve caps, let it set for 30 minutes, get it back in there, and then do the rest. They'll all dry as they set because we don't have to move them. These 2 we got to move, and we don't want oil leaks like we had on the last one. That's why we're doing it this way. I'm going to get the valve covers on. We'll go further on this. Again, on the fuel lines, in case I forgot to mention, this is the only thing that's tight on the injection pump. All the rest here is just hand tight so that we can get started. Everything on the injectors is hand tight because we still have to bleed them. So I'll get the valve covers on, we'll be set, and then we'll bleed the engine. Or, well, no, we can't bleed the engine until we get the intake on. We'll do that next. Okay, real quick, we're ready to get it on. I'm trying to speed the video up so we can get done here. We pulled the tube. This is the new tube. The only difference is this little bend. Apparently it's important. So that's the way it's going to go. We have 4 gaskets. 2 and 2. Okay? It's obvious how they're going to go on. Again, it's important to note the one that has the plate for the mounting position for the fuel injection lines goes towards the cab. This goes towards the engine. As we put it in, we're going to bend this little tab over and slide the bolt through. It's that simple. I'm going to get it on. We'll go from there. Okay, guys. Again, sorry about the angle, but we're here. We've got this dude on now. It's important to notice it is not tight. We've done all 3 bolts on each one except for the 4th that has the tab. The tab's not hard to bend. I just thought I might be able to get a little better bend with a punch. So I'm going to do that real quick and then see if we can't get the bolt in. Doesn't look too bad, I guess. With that bent over, do that hand tight. Perfect. Now we're going to do it to the other one. Once we have everything hand tight, we're going to go through and torque it. We'll get it torqued down to whatever I didn't even look at what the book said for this, so we'll figure that out in a little bit. I'm sure if you're looking at this to do your own, you've got the same book so you can get the torque spec. We'll torque this dude down, and then we'll throw the tube on because we removed the tube. Then this is done. We'll replace our caps and tighten down all of our clamps. Once the caps are all tightened down, that's when I'll come back and you'll see what we're doing. We will bleed the injectors and fire this thing up, and then we're done with the driver's side of this project. All right, before we bleed the injecting lines, there's one more thing I got to show you that I forgot all about. Excuse me. The power lines for the heating element. They come out over here. There's 2 of them. You have to open the loom, pull them out, and split them to go to the other one. You can't really see it, but it's right back here, so you lock those down. You'll have to do that, and then button all this back up so it looks good. Don't leave it open like that. Anyways, do that, and then I'll get this all buttoned up, throw the tube on, and we'll do the injectors at that, or the injection lines at that point. So, okay, she's ready to bleed the lines, and we'll tell you. I started the video, I went to try it, and terminal started smoking. Well, what was going on is the contact was so bad. So I had to clean the bolt, put a new nut on, take the cutoff wheel from the grinder and thin that out so we could tighten it up. So now it's tight. And I cleaned all these connections, put everything back on. This kind of needs a little bit of attention. But now we're ready to go ahead and bleed those lines. So all the injector nut lines, these are all loose. What we're going to do is we're going to get in the cab. We're going to crank it over until we see some fuel start to squirt. Then we'll come over and tighten the lines. We'll try and fire it up. So let's jump in here. Alright, just looking for fuel. Yep, you can see it coming. Alright, so we'll go tighten those lines and try and fire it up. Okay guys, I just tightened that stuff down. We're going to try this again here. See what happens. Sweet! You hear the hesitation and all that? That's going to work itself right out. Let's walk around and check it out. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to let this run and warm up, and I'm going to look at all the injection lines and look for leaks. And that's what we're doing right now. After that's done, we can put our cover back on the valve covers, move on to the turbo and exhaust. All right, guys, I'll see you on the next video.